I'm parked at the park. I've been feeling kind of emotional today because I'm leaving, and the last 3 days I was hoping to see different people and different groups of people, and things get canceled because of weather or somebody being sick or both. And so I haven't been able to see the people that I was really hoping to see before I leave. And it almost feels like the universe is giving me a taste of having to detach from everyone before I even leave. So hopefully I get to see people at some point in the next 4.5 days. But we'll see, because not all the variables are within my control. Guess I'll go home and do stuff to get ready to go. I feel like I just want to be around people already. And I wanted to be around the people I know, but it's not working out. So I just want to go, so I can be around people. Guess I'll probably make some videos when I get home. If I can't talk to people, then I'll just have to talk to myself. I just ate a few too many gummy frogs, but I think it gave me a bit of a boost because I felt really tired. But then I just kept eating gummy frogs, and now I feel like I have a little bit more energy. I spoke with someone today who knows somebody who is in a worst case scenario situation when it comes to being medicated, being stuck in a long-term facility with no control over one's medications and being medicated and change medications, and there's no way out. And I feel like that is something that could have happened to me if I didn't get out of my situation that I was in the psych ward in April of last year. And I remember last year when I got out of the psych ward, I was talking to somebody who makes documentary films, and I was thinking about making a documentary. And he was ready to get into it right away, but I was thinking that I wasn't quite ready because I wanted to be able to speak from the vantage point of being off medication, not just sharing my story about mental illness. And I'm still not off medication, so I'm still not there, but I was thinking it might be interesting to explore attempting to try and get this person out of this facility. At the same time exploring ECPR and creating a community that has that context of not pathologizing people first. And also my journey towards getting off psych meds. But I don't know. These videos might end up being a documentary of sorts. And it was a pretty powerful conversation. This person's also interested in respite centers or healing centers that have alternatives to all of this harsh medication, and also helping people come off medication. And I feel like these are conversations that we need to have as peers and realize that there are other options out there. Seeing what resonates and then starting to request or demand that other things be made available and other avenues made available for people to come off meds if they don't want to be on them anymore, and not just taper off them quickly, which is often done, and then it's not successful, and then it's seen as a person needs their meds, but slowly, carefully, properly, with lots of other types of supports in place. And these are all really big topics, and I'm just wondering if, while I'm down in California, I'll want to work on this stuff, or if my attention will be diverted elsewhere for a while, which could be good. I'm really not sure, but I do feel like I don't want to be put in the path of pathology again, so I have to keep myself out of that line of sight. And I'm wondering if I need to put this conversation with myself away for a while I'm away. Talk about something else. Talk about things with myself that I would talk about with myself if I had all the gifts of this transformative process without the detriments. And again, work on moving towards the gifts and not focusing on these negative aspects. And I feel like right now it's hard to breathe, like there's no oxygen in this place. Sometimes it smells so strongly of cooking meat, and that grosses me out, so I turn on my diffuser with the essential oils, but then I'm like choking on essential oils, so it'll be nice to get some oxygen. And this person clued me into NAC, or N-acetylcysteine, as an antioxidant, because they said that the brain actually has a higher oxidation rate in people with bipolar and other diagnoses. At least they're finding that out through research. And then NAC helps to mitigate some of that oxidation. And to me that makes sense, because I feel like if people that are labeled are more perceptive, we're processing more information and more energy, and then that could cause more oxidative stress in the brain. So I feel like some of us have the potential to get locked up in long-term facilities because of this iatrogenic factor. And then it's very difficult to get out of that situation. And I was thinking about the term emergence, because spiritual emergence is another way to describe psychosis or spiritual emergency. And I've heard before the word emotion be described as emotion, or energy in motion. So if we think about the word emerge in the same way, it's energy merging. And what is the energy merging with? And I think that the energy is actually merging with each other, with other people. And when that happens, we perceive as that oneness, as that wholeness, and we see that we are that mirror, and whatever is there to be perceived in the moment is on that mirror, and that's how we can feel the situation so strongly, and we feel it as ourselves. Even if it's something that's happening in the situation or to others, we feel it as we would feel it in ourselves, and that's the empathy. And the reason I am talking about this is because I feel like we need to have a language of emergence. So if we're able to emerge or go through this process, we need to be able to speak in a way to allow that to take hold. What I'm trying to say is, if we go through this transformation and we go through this spiritual emergence, but then we come back and we speak as our ego self, or from the perspective of the ego, we're going to be reinforcing that, as opposed to the fact that we're now speaking as the oneness. It's like we're separate bodies, of course, but we're the same mirror. And when our mirror is clear and we've emerged, we can all see the same thing in our mirror, because we're not blocked and blinded by our own personal prejudices and ideas and ideologies and all the things that are programmed over our mirror, over our clean slate of perception. And when we speak egoically, we use language to divide ourselves. Whereas if we speak as Gaia, as oneness, because we can see more than just the situation of humanity, we can see the situation of the animals and the plants, so we can actually speak as Gaia. There's this Gaiac language once we've merged with the Gaia sphere, and we speak as that, and we feel as that, and we share as that, not from our own little vantage point that we used to have. Because I feel like it's possible that some of this emergence can happen, but a lot of the healing is directed towards reintegrating as an ego, as opposed to reintegrating or integrating as this Gaiac consciousness. And then one person might say, well, yeah, I'm spiritual, and I'm spiritual, and I'm spiritual, but we're still all seeing and acting separately. And I feel like when we merge, we see together, and we can see the same thing at the same time, but that thing that we see is always changing as time and space unfolds. So if we have a spiritual emergence and then we sort of take that as what spirituality is, once we've healed and integrated again as this ego, then it prevents the further unfolding of what we're designed to unfold together. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just feel like there's this together thing. And if we use the ego language again, we're using that me language, and that's our own voice turned against us, and that creates this sound barrier. And when we have this sound barrier up of our little individual beliefs, we can't see beyond that. So what I'm trying to say is this spiritual emergence doesn't necessarily end per se. We have to continue to let go of our perceptions and beliefs in order to remain clear to see the next thing. Because I could have a spiritual emergence and then spend the next 20 years talking about that experience. But if I let it go and I've really merged and I can really see, I'll always be talking about something new and different. And the ego language divides us. There's got to be a language that brings us together, to gather. I haven't really talked much about what I experienced in my last crisis when I was able to avoid the psych ward. And I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but it was very strange. This is probably the strangest thing I've ever experienced. I wanted to listen to a song on my iPhone, so I did the swipe like that, and I searched for the song, and I clicked on it, and as the screen flipped over to go to the song, there was a full screen width of some kind of writing. And I wasn't sure, it looked kind of like The Matrix. But then when I thought about it later, or right after, I don't even know, it kind of looked like hieroglyphics. And I have no idea what that means. But I definitely saw it. And I was thinking the other day about how I've shared that the very first time I went into that state, I was laying there handcuffed to the balcony, and I was making these bird sounds, and I could feel my mouth moving, and I felt like I was a bird flying south, though I also felt like I was laying there, but I could feel this. And I was thinking about how I don't know if it's in hieroglyphics or something else, or just Egypt, or I don't know enough about that stuff, but I do know that they have that depiction of a human with a bird head. And so I'm just wondering if that has some kind of significance symbolically. And I also remember in the first experience of that state, I felt like when we sleep at night, our souls kind of go up into the birds, and I could see all these birds flying around all the time, and even going in apartment windows. And I also felt like the world was upside down, and I felt like there was another world on the other side of the sun. Like you could go through the sun to a different earth. And those are just not really related things, but this language that I saw on the iPhone was just weird. And I'm on an email list for a guy named Michael Stone, and he's a shaman. And he said that one of the ways to create change is by changing the community listening field. And he didn't go into it in the email, but it made me think of my process of self-dialogue, because I'm changing the listening field of my conversation with myself, at least. And to some extent, those vibrations are going out into reality, but they're also being recorded and shared, potentially. And that will make those vibrations extend and perhaps change the community listening field of peers, even just a little bit. And if I do share it, I hope to become more interconnected with my peers and people who go through these sorts of experiences. And for years and years, I've been attempting to share, but never quite getting there. I remember 10 years ago, I bought a laptop thinking that I'd be out and about and then actually creating something on the laptop, but I didn't really do anything. And then years later, in Mania, I bought another mini laptop, and I did use it, but not really for sharing. And then each time I get an iPhone, I usually justify, well, I need the best one in case I want to share some kind of thing. And then finally, with this last iPhone, this most recent one, I'm finally living up to the amount I paid for it, and the technology, and my willingness and having something to say is all seemingly coming together at the same time. Because if I have the device but I don't have anything to say, then it's useless, and that's what happened before. But also the technology wasn't necessarily good enough to make longer videos and then upload them and share them. Even YouTube only had 10-minute videos before, and now they accept longer videos. And I was actually thinking that when I get to California, it'd be interesting to speak more as Gaia, just be out in nature and speak as Gaia, because I've done a lot of speaking about the nature of my experiences in the mental health system, as well as some of the experiences I've had in altered states of consciousness, and the consequences of that. But what are the consequences of being out in nature, being somewhere pristine, having fresh air, being in touch with new people? And there's even apps now where one can share in real time, and I think just stream it and keep babbling. And I'm wondering if one day I can have sort of a babblathon and just keep talking and talking and talking. Perhaps more as Gaia in nature, as a way to unfold perceptions and kind of illustrate the newness of being able to see in this way, just being able to talk unedited for long periods of time. And even in these videos, I mainly just edit out when I look at my notebook or cough or small bits. Usually I record, say, 40 minutes and I edit out 10 minutes. So it's just mostly just talking and editing out most of the gaps in respect of people's time. I could just not edit them out if I wanted to, but one day perhaps I'll get to a point where I can just talk for 20 minutes straight, unfolding something as opposed to talking about these little fragments of things. And a part of the point of that would be to show perhaps that somebody like me and other people like me too, we don't have diseased and dysfunctional brains. We have very perceptive and active brains that maybe want to talk about something else in life, about perceptions rather than what's on TV. But when we're medicated, then we end up watching TV. But our brains work in a different way, and we see different things, and we want to talk about different things. And when that first gets activated, we're talking nonsense. But if we were able to have enough dialogue, the nonsense would fall away, and we would actually be quite articulate and eloquent speakers, visionaries, prophets, mystics, magicians. And I was talking yesterday or something about the role that we play when we put ourselves in the lens of the doctor. Well, I'll be going a few months without putting myself in front of a doctor as long as nothing dramatic happens. And maybe when I come back, I won't even want to go back to see a doctor or a psychiatrist or have any of those types of supports. I'm not sure, but it would be nice if that were true. I want them to lose a customer. I want them to lose a consumer. And there are definitely lots of people out there who identify as consumer survivors, as psychiatric survivors, and I'm not yet in that dimension. I haven't transcended the system. And that's part of why I want to talk to myself through it, is to share some of that. Because the people that have done it, they're out there sharing and advocating and doing amazing work. And I want to be able to do that too. And Michael Stone talked about the myth of separation. Well, mania and psychosis are experiential ways of feeling that there is no separation, and it is indeed a myth. And mania is really sharing of a wave of energy. And the more interconnected we can be to share those waves of energy, the less it will get stuck in us and turned against us when those pockets of energy are made available to us. And I don't know if these things are necessarily true, but that's something I want to experiment with moving forward. I do sort of want to experiment with thinking of myself more as a mystic in a way. Not that I think I am, but if I don't actually think I can think of myself that way. It would be more speaking in such a way that others might recognize me as such, but I'll be totally oblivious. I'll be like, what are you talking about? And just whatever. Have no real concept of me as a mystic, because that can't really coincide. I feel like I can think of myself more as a philosopher, a lover of wisdom. The mystic part comes with interconnectedness. I don't think a person can be a mystic in isolation. For example, a person labeled and diagnosed, if they were recognized as a mystic and supported on that trajectory, they would be a mystic, but that can't happen in isolation. It needs the support of the community recognizing that. Whereas if they're seen as pathological and having some kind of brain disease, they're going to be funneled into that channel. So I'm no longer going to funnel myself through that pathological path.